Hey, what's up everyone? This is Snackbox. Hope you all are having an amazing Friday. Guys, in this video I want to show you my event dungeon stage 30 team. As you can see here in 7 seconds. Some of these were pretty accessible. Wukong was a login champion years ago. Mad Hatter was a fusion. Ramantu is a mission champion. I would say Kalvalax and Shu-Zen are probably the hardest ones to get in here, but either way. So this is a pretty common theme or concept for the event dungeon, just making use of the splash damage of Wukong. There are also other champions that can do it. The Siegfried, for example. We also have Baron that can do it. So it's a pretty common concept. And what you are trying to achieve is to get as many multipliers into this team, as many damage multipliers, so Wukong hits hard enough to one-shot the boss. That's basically your main goal. Now, the difference between this event dungeon and the last one is that this boss right here has a lot of mechanics for turn meter control. So he has the 6-star temporal chains. So that means every time you put up a buff, the turn meter of your champions will be decreased. So therefore, the order your champions go will kind of be messed up and the enemy champions will cut in. Also, we have the Unity champion from the Shadowkins in here. And he has a very, very annoying passive. Let me actually show you that real quick, because this is pretty important to know if you don't know what he does. So his passive fills this champion's turn meter by 15% whenever an enemy champion takes a turn. Yeah, so there are actually 4 faction allies, but he only needs 3 to, maximize the efficiency of his skills. So all allies are immune to turn meter reduction effects from enemies, and then also turn meter increase effects used on allies are 20% more active. And yeah, this is actually pretty annoying. So I really need to block it so my team works properly. That's basically why Ramantu is in here, and he's doing such a great job by locking out those passives. We have actually 3 passes that are super annoying here. Most annoying is probably the one from Tetsuya. Then we have one from Kyoku, which heals and puts up increased defense, also very annoying. And then the one from Harima, which lowers your death ignore. So basically, we are trying to negate all those passives with Ramantu. Then we have Mad Hatter and Kalvalax here to push the damage, right? I put them both in feral sets. Mad Hatter is ally attacking with Wukong and putting out hex debuffs and weaken, and he's in a feral set. So that means if he places the weaken and the hex, there will be 10% more damage, 25% more damage from the weaken, and then the hex will also spread some damage. Then we have Kalvalax. He doesn't even need to take a turn. You only need enough accuracy, and we still don't know the exact stats that you need, the requirements for accuracy and so on. But was assuming that it will be kind of similar to the last event dungeon, which means around 500 accuracy plus is what you want to aim for if you're trying to place debuffs. So with Kalvalax, I use him all the time in the arena. He's basically the new hegemon, so to say. I put him in a feral set as well. And he puts up those poisons, and each poison debuff will give me another 5% more damage. That means 20% more damage. So we got 35% more damage from Mad Hatter, plus the hex. Then we have 20% more damage from Kalvalax. And then Shu-Zen will get a turn, give an insta-turn to Wukong, and that's pretty much end of the story. So let's take a look at the run real quick. So let me actually slow that down. As you can see, Kalvalax puts up the poisons instantly. You don't need speed. I have the poison relic on him, obviously, so that might help. Maybe if the boss survives with like 1-2% HP. It didn't happen for me yet, but it might give him the rest, Might be the little bit of damage that you might need to finish the boss. 2 of the poison debuffs got resisted on Kyoku, but that's not really important to place it on her. We want to place it on the boss and Harima, because Wukong is Spirit Affinity, Harima is Force, so Wukong will target Harima. Now Ramantu is next in line, and he's gonna block the passives. Now the thing here is with Ramantu, there is a 3% chance that the block passives will get resisted. It didn't happen for me yet, but there is a 3% chance and it will happen. And I don't know if I will still be able to complete the run or not, if it will mess up my run. I believe if I miss the block passive on Tatsuya, he will cut in and kill my Wukong. So I guess there is a 3% chance that this fails, but there might be also more 3% chances. I'm not quite aware. But the next in line is Mad Hatter. So he will ally attack the boss. Wukong joined in with the A1. We already got like, I don't know what it is, 5% damage. Now we got the weaken on Harima. We blocked the passive. We got Hex. We got 4 poison debuffs. And that's 7 debuffs in total. 6 out of those were placed by Feral Set wearers. Now Shu-Zen will give an insta-turn to Wukong. And because she places increased attack, increased crit rate, 30% crit rate, we can build Wukong with 70% crit rate and just build him with full damage. He doesn't need speed at all because he will get that instant turn. We can build him with less crit rate, and that just opens up so many possibilities to, stack up the attack and crit damage, and makes it just so much easier to one-shot the boss, basically. And there we go. So yeah, so let's try that again. Now I believe if the weaken from Mad Hatter gets resisted too, there's a 3% chance as well. It might fail as well. So there's always that 3% chance to fail. I don't know if the weaken is a deciding factor, but I really believe so because it's 25% damage, right? So if the weaken gets resisted on Harima or the boss, this might actually fail. So now we got it actually down to 6 seconds. Pretty interesting. Let's do it one more time. Okay, we missed 1 poison debuff on the boss, but it doesn't matter. It was still enough damage. Again, 6 seconds. So yeah, we got it even down to 6 seconds. We cut the time by 1 second. So yeah, not bad. Now, I would say the most important champions in here are Shu-Zen and Ramantu. Ramantu to block the passives, Shu-Zen to give that instant turn. And now all the other champions, they have replacements. Like I said, Wukong, Siegfried, maybe even a Baron. I don't know. I never really used Baron, so I'm not quite aware. But I'm sure Siegfried can do this too. Wukong is probably the most used for this type of comp because he was, pretty much a login champion, pretty much accessible to anyone a couple years ago. And then, you could use anybody for placing weaken, and then, somebody else to place debuffs to boost the damage. The biggest problem for me really was to find champions to play around debuffs so I can make that comp work, because if I would use buffs, I would get totally controlled by the temporal chains, and then the enemy champions would cut in. So I really had to move from buffs to debuffs, basically. Now, let me show you the champion builds real quick. So Ramantu is the first one that takes a turn, right? He's the fastest one and 366 speed and 558 accuracy. That's pretty much the only stats that I care about here. I want him to go first. I want him to be fast. I want him to place the debuffs. Now, one way to, maybe make this a little bit more safer would be to, build him in a 9-piece Feral set as well. So you get an additional 5% more damage from his block passive if it lands. As you can see, I didn't even roll up the accessories. I just used them to stack a little bit more speed. He has no relic. He's completely booked, has Brimstone, and these are his masteries. Then we have Kalvalax. He's in a 9-piece Feral set, so you get that extra % damage per buff. And all that really matters is the accuracy, 560 accuracy. You could also stack up some attack if you can, if you're able to. Speed doesn't matter because, he will place the poisons at the start of the turn or the round. And you don't need to take a turn with him. He can be slow as hell, and it doesn't matter. You could theoretically, as I said, stack up some attack, give him the poison relic, so in case you need like another, I don't know, 5% more damage to finish the boss, you know, the poisons will do the job. Then he's completely booked, but you don't really need to book him. You only need the passive to work, and that doesn't need any books. And then here are the masteries. Then we have Mad Hatter, also in a 9-piece Pharaoh set. We're trying to stack as many damage multipliers as possible. He needs to go before Shu-Zen. So 333 speed and 529 accuracy. These are the only stats that I care about. So the order needs to be Ramantu, Mad Hatter, Shu-Zen. That's basically how this thing goes. No relic on this guy. He's completely booked because you want that 25% chance to place the weaken and the hex, the extra, so you get it to 100%. So that's pretty important. And I have the 5-star blessing on him, which is cruelty, which also helps a little bit. And then the mastery is right here. You could also go with more accuracy if you need it. You don't really need the War Master. Then there is Shu-Zen in a 9-piece protection set for extra damage, and you know the buffs placed by her. It doesn't really matter that we trigger the temporal chains because Wukong will get that insta-turn anyway. So she is 1 speed slower than Mad Hatter, and you don't need anything else. You basically just need her 1 speed slower than Mad Hatter. I got the wand on her, but that's just for PvP purposes, and she's completely booked. But you also don't need her booked for this. But if you have a Shu-Zen, you might want to give her some books. Also, the IP doesn't really help because we're using the Wukong aura, which is an arena speed, and it doesn't really help here in the dungeon. And these are the masteries, but they don't really matter. And here we have Wukong in a 6-piece Merciless set, 2-piece Zeal, and 1 pinpoint for some extra accuracy. And this is basically also my best attack ring from the pinpoint set with a pretty nice glyph. I think I use this on my Nishak normally. So these are the stats: 8.7k attack, speed doesn't matter, 71% crit rate, 385 crit damage, and 354 accuracy. I have the Gore Crescent on him, which is actually pretty good. I ranked it up to 4. Gives attack, crit damage. And the cool thing about this is that the wearer's next attack after killing an enemy deals 20% more damage, another 15, so 35% more damage after killing the initial target. And this is quite a lot. Then we stack up a little bit more damage even with this gemstone right here. The wearer's damage increases by 1% per 100 of their total accuracy. And then another 20% more damage in dungeon battles from the Dungeon Delver gemstone. So we have 350 accuracy. That's another 3% damage. So 23 from the gemstones, 35 from the relic itself. So that's 58% more damage just from this relic. And you can get it even higher, right, if you rank it more up. But I don't want to invest more in this because it works already good enough. Then he's completely booked, obviously, because you want to get that extra 30% more damage on this skill. This is basically the one skill that one-shots everything, and then the splash damage will finish up the boss and everything else. And this is so good because it ignores 50% of the target's defense off the bat. Then we have the Merciless set, which is another 35% defense ignore. And then I gave him the Crushing Rend, so he gets another 1% death ignore for every 25 levels. And then here are the masteries. I don't need Helm Smasher, right? I don't need more death ignore. That's why I went with Flawless Execution, more crit damage, stacking up some more accuracy, Lore of Steel for additional stats, and then increase the damage inflicted by 8% and so on. You want to stack up as much damage as you can. Now, this right here doesn't really help me, so I might actually change Stoked to Fury to Killstreak, because I believe I would get an additional 3% more damage if I would use this. If I would kill Harima, then I would get another 3% damage on the splash damage, maybe. I'm not quite sure, but it might work like that. This right here is mostly used with Gurptuk because he's placing poisons on your champions. His passive is already a damage multiplier when he places poisons on your team, and then you get additional extra damage from this mastery right here. But yeah, this is what I'm using, and it still works. So as I said, we have 35 from the Merciless, we have 50 from his skill, and then the Crushing Rend is giving us another 14 Death Ignore, so we're at 99%. We're only missing 1% of Death Ignore, and I was actually thinking about giving him the Triangular Gemstone, which would give me, that one last percent to reach the 100%, but, if it works, it works. So let's do this one more time. And I'm pretty curious if I can still do it if the weekend gets resisted, but I really doubt it. So it might actually go wrong at some point. At least, as soon as the block passives will get resisted, that's definitely when it's gonna fail. But yeah, I don't know about the weekend, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna fail too. But so far it didn't, and now it did actually. So the weekend got resisted on the boss, and that's when it's gonna fail. But hey guys, that's pretty much my team that I'm using. It's not 100% win rate. I'm pretty sure there are some teams that we can come up with 100% win rate, but they most likely won't be that fast. Maybe with, Siegfried or something, I'm not quite sure. But now let's actually talk about the set that we can get from the event dungeon, which is the Chronophage set. Now, if we take a look at the stats, so from one piece we get 10% HP, from two pieces we get 40 resistance, and then from three pieces we get 5% speed. And that is not really that great. So even the pinpoint set gives us 10% speed with two pieces, right? Here we need three pieces for 5% speed. The protection set gives us 12% speed with three pieces. So it's not really, about speed, this one. It's more about resistance and HP. Now, if you have an HP nuker and you have like one set, like one piece left, one offset piece, you could theoretically use a Chronophage piece and get that extra 10% HP. So that's actually pretty good. Or stack up some resistance and a little bit of speed with three pieces. But it's weird. But the most important part is really the immutable stack. So it grants the wearer one immutable stack at 4 pieces at the start of the round, similar to intercept. Each immutable stack blocks a single attempt at increasing the wearer's skill cooldown. And the way that this works is that if the enemy tries to increase your cooldowns on your champion with an immutable stack, one immutable stack will just weaken this cooldown effect by one turn. So instead of putting your champion's skill on 3-turn cooldown, it will only put it on 2 turns cooldown. Now with 2 stacks, it would be only 1 turn cooldown, and then with 3 stacks, it will completely negate the skill cooldown effect unless you have a 4-turn cooldown and the enemy's skill cooldown effect is not limited to a turn. So yeah, that's basically how this works. Now, there are only a few champions that can actually do that, so this set, it will be very niche, right? So we have Yumeko, we have Warlord, we have Krixia, we have Fabian, and those are probably the most common ones, the most used ones to put enemy skills on cooldown. There are also a few other ones, but those are rather small cooldown increases. So yeah, will this be a game changer? Probably not. I don't really think so, because it's, a very niche use. Either way, I still think for early and mid-game players, those stats might be actually pretty good. I think this will definitely help some people to progress. Resistance can be quite good to progress in the Doom Tower and so on. So I don't think it's completely useless, but I don't think it's gonna be that relevant for the end game players like Pinpoint was or still is. So yeah, if you're asking yourself if you should farm this event dungeon or not, so the way I'm gonna attack this is that I'm gonna complete the dungeon tournaments, like the Ice Golem tournament right now, and then we also have this Dungeon Divers event. So once I get to the 2,250 points, all the other energy will go into the event dungeon. And that's basically how I am going to attack it. Now, you can obviously decide for yourself, but I would recommend you to at least get a couple of pieces out of the event dungeon if you have some spare energy. It really doesn't hurt, but I wouldn't go crazy on it. I don't think it's that insane. Another cool thing now is that we at least have a crit damage set in here, so it's not completely useless, right? The last event dungeon, all of the other sets were pretty much bad, like really bad. I mean, it's not really different now, but you know, the crit damage set can be used here and there. So it's not that bad. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much my opinion on the Chronophage set. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this set. Do you think it's going to have a huge impact? Do you think it's better than it looks? Or are you sharing my opinion? With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed, please hit the like button. It really goes a long way. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And the YouTube algorithm is going to suggest you a video that you might like right here. And see you in the next one.